What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball because it's week 4, and I mean, here joining me to talk a little week 4, to talk a little ball, it is Justin Boone. Boone, week 4 came up pretty quick, bro. Like, I thought it was just week 1 2 seconds ago. We're all the way in week 4 now. What's going on, man?
It always does come very quickly. I think that first quarter of the season goes by really fast every year. But yeah, I thought the same thing earlier in the week. I was like, man, by the end of this week, we're done almost a quarter of the fantasy season. Like, that seems wild at this point. But man, we are into it now, right? Like, today we're going to be talking rookies. We got some big matchups of teams that have kind of underwhelmed, at least record-wise so far this year. We got injuries to talk about. It's a lot of stuff to go over, man. Let's get to it.
Yeah, I was talking with our mutual friend JJ Zacharyson last night about this, where I just am going to feel so much more settled here pretty soon. Like, we're almost there to that point where I'm like, all right, there's going to be some surprises along the way, but things will just start to feel much more settled. Like week 5, week 6, we'll know who these teams are. Not that we're going to know everything. Again, there's going to be surprises throughout the course of the season, but that to me, Boone, is when I start to feel like, okay, I'm a little settled into what this season is. I'm not clinging to my August priors anymore. I've let go of some dreams, and I'm like more so living in the reality of where we are.
Well, it's like a big enough sample size. Like, after 3 or 4 games, now you can start to actually draw some conclusions. Because 1 or 2 games, like, it could be matchup based. There could be injuries that are kind of swaying things, like guys being out and other guys getting more opportunity. But once you get to the 4 games, now you start to feel good about what you're seeing. You start to figure out exactly who the strong matchups are, the weaker matchups you can target, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. Like, once you get kind of past September, that's when I start to feel a lot better about my projections. That's for sure.
All right, so let's get into it. It's the week 4 preview show. Here's how these shows always go. If you've never watched us, you've never listened before, if that's true, welcome. Appreciate you. First 2 segments of the show, that's going to feature Boone's 6-pack of questions for each week's slate of games. Segment number 3, that is where I'll come in with literally no one's games of the week. I pick 3 games that are absolutely headliners by 0%. No means are these headliners at all, but you got to care about them, these potential little lovable freak show matchups. And then segment number 4, that's going to be the hurry up offense, where Boone and I, 40 seconds on the clock? I should know this by now. Yes, 40 seconds on the clock. We got to answer the question in 40 seconds or less. Rapid fire to close out the show. But let's start off here. Let's dive into Boone's 6-pack of questions. I like how you've got your own little branded little bottle there. That's pretty cool for the 6-pack. I'm still pitching, though. One of these weeks the producers need to switch it up, and it needs to just be you on like an absolutely ripped body, like a full 6-pack type situation. I think that would be a nice twist at some point later in the season. I think that would look good on you, pal.
I thought you were going to say I actually get to have a 6-pack here during the show. That would be a nice twist too. We should be pitching that.
Well, maybe we get a sponsor for that. That would be nice too. All right, let's get into it here. Let's get into your first question for the 6-pack. Game of desperation, Boone. What do we got here?
It's a pretty big game. It's not the records we expected going into this, but the Ravens and the Chiefs, like, even though both teams right now aren't where they thought they were going to be record-wise, it's a pretty big one for fantasy. This is a pretty big one for real life. They want to get things turned around. There's a lot of fantasy assets in this game that we should talk about here, including on the Chiefs side, where, like, it's looking pretty rough. Like, people are really, like, scrounging for who they can play in fantasy, and see people talking up Tyquan Thornton and Xavier Worthy might be back this week, and Hollywood Brown hasn't really stepped up, even though he had an opportunity with all these injuries and with Rashee Rice suspended. Like, there are so many angles we could come at this game from. And still, this game has the second highest projected point total on the week, despite everything that's gone on with the Chiefs, despite the fact that we've kind of talked about how down we are on that offense multiple times. Maybe Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to muster up some magic again. But Harmon, I mean, I don't know, like, what's your like big angle on this game? Like, what's your favorite piece of this game fantasy wise? Because you could almost come at it from like any position.
I'm actually going to talk about what's not my favorite angle here, because I think this is the most important one. And usually I would be all in on, wide receiver alignment and like how guys fit into certain roles. But because I don't have a good answer on this, I'm curious what you think, because I don't really have a strong take here. Xavier Worthy comes on the field. Okay, let's hypothetically live in the world where he plays. Who comes off the field, right? Like that's what's interesting to me, because Tyquan Thornton has given them some pretty good plays. I mean, it's been mostly down the football field type stuff. It's not as if he is a guy that is showing up as hey, I'm matriculating the football, kind of giving them the singles and doubles. He's mostly been all home runs. That's it. I think his air yards per target is like 20 something. It's absurd. So is he a guy that, because he has performed and done stuff for them, is he going to stay on the field? And in that case, Juju's probably not coming off, like, because he's Rashee Rice's replacement. Does that mean Hollywood Brown, who honestly hadn't done all that much outside of week 1 when he just got pummeled with a bunch of targets and had the one off script play from Patrick Mahomes, but he's the veteran, is he going to lose his job to Tyquan Thornton? I have no idea. That's something, if Worthy does play, I'm really curious to see, because I imagine he probably goes back into a full-time role if they're feeling good enough about the shoulder and everything, but I can't quite figure out, like, he goes on the field, who comes off.
Well, fantasy-wise, it's such a big risk too, right? Because you want to play Worthy, like early in the season. Remember, week 1, we were excited about playing Worthy with Rashee Rice out, and yet now, even if he does play this week, don't you think he's just like one hit away from re-aggravating that injury and going out? Like, it doesn't seem like he's 100%, right? So you have to bake that into his fantasy outlook, which makes him more of a wide receiver 3 flex and somebody that I wouldn't necessarily feel great about putting in my lineup. And yet we also know 1 or 2 big plays and he could have a huge fantasy game here, right? So I kind of agree that, to me, Hollywood Brown is the one that had the chance, didn't come through with it, and shouldn't really get as much opportunity. I think Worthy should come in. We should continue to see Tyquan Thornton out there. And Tyquan Thornton also kind of still just a risky flex. Like, I think I have him as like around wide receiver 50. So like wide receiver 4 flex option. Not somebody you feel good about putting in your lineup, but if you're kind of desperate, you could look to him, especially with Worthy back. Like, that takes away even more chances, I think, that he's going to have a potential big game. But other than that, like in that Chiefs offense, you look at Mahomes, and the Ravens defense has not been what at least I thought it was going to be this year. So it's not as scary of a matchup as you would have thought, like on paper. So Mahomes still a QB1. He could probably come through. He'll find ways to get it done. We've talked about how much he's been using his legs this year. But other than that, the offense, we have already basically written off Isaiah Pacheco in that backfield from a fantasy perspective. Travis Kelce, not the Travis Kelce of old. You don't really feel good putting him out there, just a low-end tight end 1 for fantasy at this point. And then that receiving core. And all of that on the Chiefs side just boils down to me. And I know we have brought up Rashee Rice as a buy before, but just a screaming buy. If you are a contender right now, you should be going out and doing everything you can to go get Rashee Rice, because he answers, in my mind, a lot of these problems. There is opportunity here, and they need a guy to come in and take on a bunch of volume. That's exactly what he has done in the past, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do when he comes back. But for this week, I'm someone who's always honest about this stuff. I am not 100% sure what this receiving core is going to look like for fantasy in week 4, and that's why I'm mostly just trying to stay away from it.
25.17 air yards per target for Tyquan Thornton. That is crazy. And Xavier Worthy's not going to step into that role. He's probably more likely to hit into the Marquise Brown kind of 7.7 air yards per target. So I wouldn't be surprised if Marquise Brown is the one who gets removed from this lineup for Xavier Worthy. And I'm with you that Ravens defense has shown some cracks. Nnamdi Madubuike is not going to come back for this game. That's going to be tough for the run defense, but don't really care about those running backs. I do care about getting this Ravens offense right. What are your thoughts on that side of the ball? Because that to me is a pretty interesting one to discuss after. I mean, man, this would be a great spot for the Ravens. Big loss on Monday night. They obviously lost to your Bills in week 1. Let's get this monkey off of our back with a big win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, another great AFC contender. But how do you think they get it done from an offensive perspective?
I mean, I will shout out Lamar Jackson as like a thing that I got, sort of very, very small thing that I got wrong. I had Josh Allen over him as my QB 1 and 2 in my rankings before the season, and there's still the 1 and 2, but I think it is very clear right now that Lamar Jackson is the quarterback one, right? He's averaging over 30 fantasy points per game here. He's just putting up huge numbers. So I really, really want to give him all the credit in the world because, maybe it was the Bills thing a little bit, but still Lamar Jackson is playing out of his mind and had some tougher matchups too, right? The Browns defense, the Lions defense, and still came through with these huge games. Derrick Henry is one that I'm kind of trying to figure out still this week. I've been looking into it a lot, right? It's a tough draw for him up against this Chiefs front. And he had that huge game against the Bills in week 1, right? That monster game. And everybody starts to go, okay, Derrick Henry, does he still have it? Can he do it? Another big season. And then since then, it's been a lot quieter. And it was because I think the matchups got a lot tougher, right? The Browns front, the Lions front, those are two tough run defenses. Just 73 yards and a touchdown in those two games. Everyone's talked about the fumbling like crazy. I don't think that's a real problem for him. I'm sure that's going to dry up pretty soon, but it is kind of weird to see so many fumbles from him, especially in like critical moments of games here early in the season. And you always keep it in your mind, right? The age thing, is he starting to get a little older? Is he slipping in any way? I'm not going down that road right now, but I still think that this is going to be another one of these tough matchups where I don't think this is going to be a ceiling game for Henry. So that pushes him down to like the low end RB1, almost even high end RB2 range. Because we know he's not going to put up big numbers in the receiving game. So he really has to come through with the yardage and the touchdowns. We could talk about a lot of things. I mean, Zay Flowers, where did he go last week, Harmon? Like, we were talking about this guy, and we both said that he wasn't necessarily a true, wide receiver one for fantasy, even though he was performing like that early in the season. But still, last week, just 2 catches for 13 yards, just 3 targets in a spot where they really needed him against the Lions, and he did not come through in that game at all. Mark Andrews comes back to life, and I mean, my just tight end curse that I just keep doing here, a reverse curse, whatever you want to call it, twice now. I don't know if you've talked about this on the show, but twice now, right? It was Dalton Kincaid the first time, where I brought up Dalton Kincaid as potentially what I thought was a mistake of mine early in the season, that I thought he could be a breakout candidate and that we weren't seeing it, that he wasn't getting the playing time and the snaps. And I made a joke that now watch, he's going to come out and score 2 touchdowns in the Thursday Nighter, because we were recording before the Thursday Nighter. And he almost scored 3. He scored 1 on paper, but he had chances for a couple more. And then Mark Andrews, I brought up Isaiah Likely on the Monday show, and the Ravens hadn't played yet. And I was saying Likely's a pickup. You stash him. Mark Andrews hasn't done much. And again, acknowledge, now watch, Mark Andrews is going to go out and have a huge game. And sure enough, at 91 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of his best games in a long time. So I'm being very careful the way I talk about tight ends today here, Harmon. I don't want to reverse curse anyone, or maybe I should be using this to my advantage and thinking of tight ends I have on my teams and then actually trying to jinx them. But if we look at Andrews, we think that Likely would be back this week. He's still limited in practice, though, so it's not guaranteed. They've kind of been suggesting week 4 could be a possibility. We don't know for sure that he's going to play in this game. When he comes back, I do think he is going to eat into Andrews' workload. And Andrews is not going to put up those kind of stats every week, but it was great to see him come back to life fantasy-wise and start producing again. So maybe that factored in a little bit to the Zay Flowers performance in that game. But this offense, there's so many weapons. There's so many guys we're starting for fantasy. Flowers, to me, still a wide receiver too. I'd like to see him come out and kind of answer the bell this week and, reconfirm my confidence in him that he can be that top 20, top 24 kind of guy. Andrews in the low end tight end 1 range, not getting overly excited about that performance, not pushing him way back up, but good to see that he can still get it done from time to time. There's a lot of pieces in this game that I think people are going to want to play, just maybe not as many as years past on the Chiefs side.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with the Zay Flowers thing, because we did kind of say that this could be happening. If we were picking between, I think it was either me or you, or I was talking with Ray about this, that between the 2 year 3 leap guys to the top tier, to the Puka quadrant, right? Zay Flowers or Jaxson Smith-Njigba. And of course, watch, maybe now I'm going to curse Jaxson Smith-Njigba by saying this. He's going on Thursday night. I've actually talked about JSN way too much. He's definitely going to have a dud game on Thursday night, because I've talked about him so much this week. So sorry about that in advance if that happens. But that he had more sustainability to stay up there, because for Zay Flowers, the talk around, well, they paid Rashad Bateman. Why aren't they, and now they're just not going to use him? Well, they're going to use him at some point. And he obviously had the big game against the Lions, like a very man coverage heavy defense. He's a man beating receiver. Mark Andrews is, I guess if you got that game last week, you kind of just have to play him again. Although if you benched him, I mean, you're asking for a headache. I have no idea what to do there. There's just not that many appealing tight ends. So I think I still ranked him as a tight end 1 for the week. It's just very fascinating with these guys. I think Zay Flowers can bounce back though. I think what we've learned from Zay Flowers for the first 3 weeks of the season, I do personally think he's made a leap in his third season. Like, he is better as an individual player. So I think the highs, as we've seen, the highs will be higher than they used to be. But there will still be some of these floor games because it's low volume, because of there are the other pass catchers. They're like, they're kind of rotating in Devontae Walker and Tylan Wallace and DeAndre Hopkins. And we'll see if that continues. I do just want to note on the running game, I'm glad you pointed this out, that he had the big game week 1, Derrick Henry. He had the touchdown last week, but they're 23rd in rushing success rate on their running back runs. They're 27th in EPA per rush. Like, they have not gotten this run game going yet. And I think maybe I think we need to have a conversation about that. If Derrick Henry has another dud game, like, maybe not, are we looking at the Derrick Henry decline, but is something up with the rushing ecosystem? I think that will be a conversation point. Unless you got anything else on this game, I think we should move to your second pack here.
The only other thing I will say, and this is just another data point, we're not going to overreact to this at all, but if you look back, these two teams did play last year, right? And Zay Flowers, kind of another inefficient game in that one, had 10 targets, only caught 6 of them for 37 yards. So hopefully we see a little bit more from him. He did have 2 carries for 14 yards in that game, but you would have liked to have seen more on 10 targets there. And then Mark Andrews, remember, last year, Isaiah Likely was playing. Isaiah Likely had that big week 1, and it was Mark Andrews, right, who was 2 for 14 in that game. It was, really kind of a low day for him. So we'll see if Likely's back out there. That's just one we're going to keep an eye on all week long.
Definitely. All right, let's get to your second set of questions here.
All right. The next one, we're going to talk about a couple teams here. And I think you guys went over this a little bit on the show. I want to go through some other names on these teams, though. And I want to find out, how are the Cowboys and the Buccaneers going to respond to losing their star receivers? Right? Like CeeDee Lamb out for a few weeks, Mike Evans out for a few weeks. Those are big pieces in those offenses. And I mean, if you start with the Cowboys side, like, the obvious thing to say is like, okay, George Pickens, oh my God, this is great for him. And he's going to get so much volume now. And he's going to go back to being, a number one receiver in an offense. And yeah, he's certainly going to benefit here. 2 solid games in a row from him as well. Like, even before the Lamb injury, the week before, 5 for 68 and a touchdown. And then kind of eerie, but 5 for 68 and a touchdown last week as well. So like,
I know
we get another like 5 for 68 and a touchdown. It's like, the simulation, the matrix is kind of glitching maybe a little bit if that happens a third time in a row here, but moving him up, like, feel more confident about him being a top 20 receiver, a pretty strong wide receiver to play, because any sort of like loss of efficiency for the offense, not having Lamb out there, I think will be made up for Pickens by getting a little more volume. Jake Ferguson, though, he is so intriguing to me. 26 targets over the last 2 weeks, 22 receptions and 160 yards. That is elite production at tight end. And we're always looking for these guys that are going to get that kind of opportunity, that kind of volume. I didn't peg Ferguson as one of them, partially because they brought in Pickens and they had Lamb. But now with Lamb out of the way, they need him to be that kind of guy. So in my rankings this week, you will see Ferguson as a top 5 fantasy tight end. Would not shock me if he finishes right up near the top as well. And imagine what could happen if he adds a touchdown or 2 to that kind of volume that he's been getting, because he hasn't scored the last 2 weeks. So I think he is a great play in this one and a great play moving forward, at least until Lamb gets back. And then a little further down the depth chart, there's some kind of intriguing flex plays as well, right? Like Kevontae Turpin, Jalen Tolbert, deeper guys, again, that you're not going to rush out to put in your lineup. But Turpin is fascinating, right? Like, he's been really effective on his opportunities. 4 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown in week 2, another 6 yards on 2 carries. That was on just 16% of the snap. So they were clearly making an effort to get him the ball. And then last week with Lamb leaving, he bumps up to 66% of the snaps, ends up with 68 scrimmage yards, does it on just 3 touches. But, he's a volatile player, probably the second best playmaker in that receiving core now, though, with Lamb out. And he's a guy that I think they're going to have to lean on a little bit here. And because he can get involved in the game in a variety of ways, I think he's somebody that is intriguing if you want to look a little deeper for someone. If you're in a deeper league or you're kind of desperate for somebody, you could look to him. And then Tolbert's a tough one because he played 88% of the snaps last week. He saw 6 targets, all of which look good, just 3 for 24 in the end. I mean, last year he had some moments. Like there were 7 games where he played at least 85% of the snaps last year. He averaged 44 yards, just under half a touchdown per game. So for context, that would be like 750 yards and 7 touchdowns on the year. He also had 9 games where he had at least 80 yards and or a touchdown. So he has the ability to come through, but another guy that is extremely volatile. And I don't know that the Packers matchup is one where you're going to want to chase those flex options, right? Like not in this offense, digging a little deeper, but I think we're going to be without Lamb for a few weeks here. So these are all guys that I just want to make sure are on everybody's radar.
Yeah, I think the depth here is a little bit better than maybe it gets credit for, especially if Pickens can be like a pseudo number 1 for a couple of weeks. I want to throw that quote back up here that we had from Pickens. That was a really good find by the producers where he talked about George Pickens, where he was talking about the expanded route tree that he is like they asked him basically. George Pickens said he's expecting more double teams and running an increased route tree with CeeDee Lamb out, because that's something I've been harping on here, Boone, that he is running out of the slot at a very low rate. It's like the same as Romeo Dobbs and like your boy Keon Coleman and Kayshon Boutte, like the sacrificial X receivers, and he's not been getting it. It's just mostly kind of 9 routes and slants, very stripped down, which isn't too surprising because that's kind of what Dak likes out of the X receiver. But Pickens is going to have to do more, and it's always hit or miss with Pickens when you're putting more on his plate, but I do think that they're going to need him to do it, and it's nice to hear that he expects to do it. We'll see if that's just talk or not, but that will be key to him kind of playing that pseudo number 1 wide receiver role, because then, the depth is pretty good. I'm glad you highlighted all these names, especially friggin' Jake Ferguson, dude. Number 1 in targets at tight end. And number 2 it's Jake Ferguson and Juwan Johnson. First and second, 32 targets for Jake Ferguson on the season. 28 for Juwan Johnson on the season. But see, that's the great thing of like no one saw that coming in the first 3 weeks. But yeah, Ferguson is Dak. Dak always loves leaning on that tight end. It's just sometimes that's a trope. Sometimes it actually plays out. This is one where it really plays out. Like he loves those seam routes over the middle. Jake Ferguson and him have like a good connection there. So I think that production is pretty stable. And Kevontae Turpin definitely, he's very efficient, right, on his looks. I'm with you that I don't know if the Packers matchup is the one to do it, but I've at least like checked dynasty waiver wires to see if Kevontae Turpin is out there, because he's not somebody that's really on the fantasy waiver, like on the radar or anything, but I do expect him to play more, and he's explosive. They need juice with like guys like Tolbert's a fine player, but they need more juice than that. So I love the suggestion about Turpin as just somebody to keep on the radar, maybe like a prop bet guy this week or something, but certainly someone I think maybe from a dynasty angle I'd like to keep on the bench right now.
This might be entirely a moot point though, because Micah Parsons is going to have like 6 sacks and just totally destroy this game. But
of course. Of course. That's fair.
All right,
let's go to Tampa Bay and talk about their...
we got to talk about the other team here. With Tampa Bay, like, Mike Evans, obviously been a massive part of that offense for a long time. And it kind of looks like Chris Godwin is going to be back this week. But what version of Chris Godwin are we getting? Is he coming back at 100%? Is he going to take a little while to knock the rust off after 2 offseason ankle surgeries? And there was a report out there that I saw today or yesterday, I can't remember who it's from, but that was saying that the team was kind of targeting next week as his return. So are they rushing him back a week early? I mean, does that matter? Emeka Egbuka has been fantastic. I mean, we've talked about this guy so much, but he's also dealing with injuries, right? He's got hip and groin issues. Last week, played significantly fewer snaps. He was over 90% of the snaps in the first 2 games. Last week, just 64%. And yet, just a testament to how good this guy is, has his best day of the season yardage-wise, right? Just goes out, puts up a nice big game, even though he's playing only 2/3 of the snaps. So he's awesome. We know that. And then you look at some of the other players, right? Like Sterling Shepard, is a guy that I know that you really like. I'm sure you like Sterling Sharp as well. He's a great receiver. But Sterling Shepard...
Who's better, Sterling Sharp or Sterling Shepard? It's hard to say.
I mean, at this point, I would probably take Sterling Shepard, I would think, if we're playing a game today. But Sterling Shepard has been like a really good pro, a bit of a journeyman, but somebody who is a really strong depth piece. And when he's gotten opportunities, he's produced. And I think they're going to have to rely on him a little bit here because from my estimation, I don't think Chris Godwin is just going to hit the ground running. I don't think he's stepping back on the
No.
field and we're going to see the guy that was, a top 10, top 12 receiver in the league before. I think he's going to take a little while to get back to form. And I'm not even 100% sure that he's ever going to get back to the same form that he had before this injury based on his age and based on the injury itself, right? So I think this is going to be a really interesting game to see what they do in this receiving core because Emeka Egbuka could potentially, if he's healthy enough, take another step forward towards becoming the number one receiver in this offense with these other guys kind of playing supporting roles. And then I really like this guy talent-wise. I think Cade Otton is a good tight end, and yet he has not done much at all this year. So could he be someone that actually gets called upon? Because last year we saw his biggest game come when there was injuries, right? So could he be a guy that steps up and actually does something? But again, similar to the Cowboys situation, this is a matchup with the Eagles. This is a tough game for them to try to figure this out on the fly without Mike Evans.
Yeah, as we're taping this right now, too, it looks like Tristan Wirfs practiced today, fully practiced. So I expect him out there, I would guess. In terms of these pass catchers, Cade Otton led the team in routes in week 3. Like, I do think he is a sneaky option at tight end if you're desperate. There was the stretch of time last season when Cade Otton was kind of the entire offense as their power slot receiver, kind of replacing Chris Godwin. We'll see if they do that again this year. Otherwise, man, Sterling Shepard, 18th in first downs per route run, doing it out wide, doing it in the slot. He's someone who definitely, if you're desperate, you can rely on. I just wonder, Boone, like, how many injuries is too many injuries for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah.
Like, we're looking at this depth chart right now. Charlie Heck at right tackle, backup right guard. It definitely will help if Wirfs is back there to push Graham Barton to center. So the left side of the offensive line would kind of be what we expected it to be. But it's just like one thing after another for this team. And you just kind of wonder, I think if they were fully healthy on offense, they could really give the Eagles a run for their money because Jalen Hurts has always kind of struggled with Todd Bowles' defense. All the blitzes and stuff like that, he's given them issues over the years. I think they could be like a potential upset watch, but I just wonder on offense, can they hang against a defense? It has its weak spots. They can be had on the ground. The corner 2 spot's an issue, but I just wonder if too many injuries have occurred here and we're just not going to get the potential ceiling from some of these guys that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that could probably lead us to my next question here because we got another team that is dealing with maybe just as many, if not more injuries than the Bucs. And that's the Commanders. The Commanders injuries across the board here. We have Terry McLaurin out getting a second opinion, and this does not look good. He's not practicing this week. It's a quad injury. He's gone to see a core muscle specialist, which, I mean, even that kind of scares me just hearing that term. That doesn't sound great. And he's going to get a second opinion. And normally when a guy's going to get a second opinion, it's because they weren't very happy with what happened with the first doctor, right? And it's a big time red flag for me, at least, whenever I see that. So that's kind of scary. I don't think he's going to play this week. And I think he's somebody that could certainly miss some time here. We're going to have to monitor that one closely, but it locks Deebo Samuel, in my mind, into a top 20, top 24 spot for fantasy. We've already seen him have some good games this year. I think with McLaurin out again, he's going to have to step up in the offense. And that's whether Jaden Daniels plays or not. And the situation with Jaden Daniels, he missed last week with the knee injury. He says that he can play this week, basically. He comes out and said that he's feeling good enough, and yet the final decision, he said, comes down to the team. So that leaves things up in the air. Are they going to put him back out there at probably less than 100%, or are they going to sit him out for another week, especially when Marcus Mariota played pretty well? And Marcus Mariota can give you 70, 80% of what you get from Jaden Daniels and kind of play in a similar fashion. So does that factor in for the team to maybe sitting him one more week? And if Daniels is out there, I think we got to be worried that he's not going to be the same player, that because of the knee injury, he's not going to run as much. So I think that factors into his fantasy outlook. That'll push him down the QB1 ranks a little bit. You still start him if he's playing, unless we get some sort of report that he's going to be severely limited. But I think you just got to adjust your expectations. And if he's not out there, like we saw last week, Marcus Mariota, a very strong streamer, a guy that you could put out there and potentially could give you QB1 numbers. So that's where it starts. We also have our guy, Bill Krosky Merritt, who is hurt. And initially, when he missed practice yesterday, they were saying, okay, it's just precautionary. He's got a knee injury, but it's just precautionary. And then he went out and missed practice again today. So now that puts a lot of pressure on Friday and whether he's going to be able to play or not. Now, the reports today were that he was out there on the side, that he was working with the strength and conditioning team. So maybe it is. Maybe they are just kind of working him slowly through the week and getting him ready for the game. But that's yet another injury. So this team could presumably right now be down their starting quarterback, their top receiver, and their top running back at the moment going into this week.
I don't know if it's fair to say our guy Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, because I think I've kind of quietly been a little bit. I'm trying to be very quiet about this because I don't want to be a jerk. And sometimes I think the contrarian in me maybe gets the best of me at times, but I think I've kind of quietly been a little bit of a hater on the whole Bill movement. Maybe not so quietly. Maybe the listeners disagree with me. I don't know. But just because everybody's so obsessed with them, I'm like, so you guys really spent all August like tweeting a touchdown or bust like flex play into existence like that. That's what you sick, like awesome in a 3-way backfield committee. That's what we've gotten out of this. So I don't know if it's fair. I don't know if it's fair to say our guy, Bill Krosky-Merritt, but definitely that would just be another thing. Like, this is a team that's dealing with a lot of injuries right now. And maybe if we did consolidate the backfield to Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols, that might actually be helpful for fantasy, right? It's a little more clarity. But yeah, I'll tell you what, if I was the Commanders, you're kind of shuffling along the offensive line a little bit right now. You're dealing with the Terry McLaurin injury, which Terry hasn't been at his best this season, which who could have seen that coming? I wonder why. Probably because he freaking practiced all of August. Should have just got that deal done months and months ago, but don't mind me. Might have helped. Even if he's not 100%, he's still like changing the coverage complexion because he's quite literally their only vertical threat. If I'm this team, I'm definitely giving Jaden Daniels another week. You're 2-1. You probably should be able to beat the Falcons with Marcus Mariota. A little revenge spot for Marcus Mariota, by the way. I know you're on the revenge radar this season. So like, I think you should be able to get by on this game. I would give it a week, another week with Jaden Daniels. Don't rush him back out there. You could probably win this game. Hopefully, based on what the Falcons were last week, you definitely should feel pretty good about it. But man, this is a pretty motley crew here with a lot of injury signs we're looking at on this potential offense. And I guess you're right. I guess that leads us back to Deebo Samuel, but that was not a great week for Deebo last week. It's very limited. He is getting some running back work. Maybe he'd get more if Bill wasn't out there. I don't know. I got a lot of skepticism about Washington right now. So maybe that's like kind of it's kind of bleeding into my analysis here. You can check me on that if you think so.
Well, I do think we might need to go back on some of the shows and actually see if that was a little revisionist history by you on the Bill Krosky-Merritt, because I think we had a lot of fun talking about Bill Krosky-Merritt over the last month or so. Maybe you weren't completely high on him, but I think we enjoyed some of those chats. I also will tell everyone
we had to freaking talk about him. Everybody else was talking about him. I mean, we had to force it.
I will also say that you and I are matched up against each other, I believe, in an office league this week, and you still have Marcus Mariota sitting in your quarterback spot right now.
That may be why I'm saying that give it a week.
He has like a 0 projection at the moment, so maybe you know something that I don't, because I didn't rank him right now. I still have Jaden Daniels ranked as a QB1. But yeah, maybe that factors into you hoping that Mariota plays, definitely. In the backfield.
Well, to be fair though, Boone, just real quick, to be fair, I also have a lot of Jaden Daniels teams, so I'm kind of banged if I do, banged if I don't here on this whole situation. So just to be clear for the record.
I think to reinforce your point about the backfield too, like it wasn't just a runaway JCM situation with Eckler not out there, right? And I wrote about this in my Deep Stashes column because I mentioned Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols as potential guys that you could pick up and maybe play if you're in a pinch, or guys you could pick up and just see how this backfield works out. And I wrote that before we knew that JCM was missing practice on Thursday as well. But last week, I mean, Bill Krosky-Merritt, 39.7% of the snaps. Rodriguez, 37.9% of the snaps. Like, he was right there. This was not a true lead back scenario. And it was Rodriguez who got more touches. And McNichols ended up outproducing everyone just because he had like one big play. I don't think that's going to happen normally because he only had 4 touches in the game. But he is a factor, 22.5% of the snaps there. So just keep that in mind. Right now, this backfield is totally in flux. It could go any way. And this injury to Bill Krosky-Merritt makes it even more complicated. And if he's not out there this week, then yes, both of these guys become flex plays, RB3 type flex options that you could get into your lineup for sure. And the other guy too, we could talk about, like Zach Ertz. He's kind of like a touchdown or bust tight end, but somebody that catches a lot of touchdowns. He's done it last year. He's done it early this season as well. Don't like him as much if it's Mariota out there and not Daniels, but still another guy that's on the radar as a high-end tight end 2 streamer type. And do you think there's anything, like if we go deeper, is there anything in that receiving core? Nope. I know Luke McCaffrey caught a long touchdown, but yeah, I don't think you're going to chase that. I don't think you're going to throw that in your lineup at all this week.
No, because guys just don't replace really Terry McLaurin's like downfield vertical skill set. So that's kind of where I'm skeptical of that. But maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. I just haven't seen a lot of like perimeter wins from those guys, but they certainly need somebody to step up because they are super banged up, which is not very fun for that particular NFC East team. But there is a team in the NFC East where it's got some rookies, maybe making them a little bit more enjoyable to watch. We will talk about that team on the other side of this quick break. All right, we are back. As promised, it is time to talk about the New York Football Giants, who might not be good in real life, but maybe they're a little bit more interesting in fantasy football. Boone, take it away for your fourth question of the week here.
It's very simple. Did the Giants offense just get fun? Like over the course of the last 2 weeks, we went from looking at this team and going, it's Malik Neighbors, and like, is there anything else here? To all of a sudden, Cam Scatterboo starts to show up and do some interesting things. And now we're getting the quarterback change to the rookie who can run a little bit, who looked pretty good in the preseason. Is it like foolish hope of me, or is it actually turning the corner that this could become a interesting, fun offense for fantasy here with Dart, with Scatterboo, with Neighbors, and then with some like contributors like Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson at tight end, with Andrew Thomas now back and hopefully going to play a little bit more as we go here in the offensive line. Like, I think there's a chance that we get some really good fantasy games because we've already started to get some good fantasy games. We know Neighbors can do it no matter who's under center. And now Cam Scatterboo shows up and the usage that he's getting is like on par with top 10, top 12 fantasy running backs. And the environment we don't think is necessarily the strongest. But if that starts to change, man, this guy also could end up being a really strong fantasy asset. And Dart, in my mind, because of the rushing ability that he brings, is already on the streamer radar as a potential play for fantasy. So, man, talk me off the ledge. Like, am I just going way too far on this one? Am I like way too excited about these guys? Or is there a chance that we actually get something out of this offense moving forward?
Okay, let's talk about the Cam Scatterboo part of this before we get to the Jaxson Dart thing, because the Scatterboo thing is a little bit different. I think it's Scatterboo, right? Not Scatterboo.
It doesn't look like Scatterboo, but it is Scatterboo, yeah.
Scatterboo. Okay, so got to get the guy's name right because for what I'm about to say, now I think this is an easy one. You start this guy, okay? It's not like the greatest matchup in the world or anything like that, but you mentioned the usage. From the second quarter on, he played 75% of the snaps. Obviously, Tyron Tracy got hurt early in that game, so 75% of the snaps, drew 9 targets. It's just a strong like outlet in the passing game. I mean, we'll see if that is sticky with Dart, because I think Dart is much more likely to take off and scramble as opposed to get to the check down. Although, again, we'll see with Jaxson Dart, but I think Russell Wilson's just a lot quicker to get to those check downs. But I think he's going to get a lot of opportunity because this offense is going to go into those heavy RPO looks, which we saw in the preseason with Jaxson Dart. We've seen it at times when they've sprinkled him in, including in week 3, these guys were on the field together. So that's the simple one to me. And absolutely, I agree with you. More fun for sure, just having him out there. We'll see how good he is long term. I think he looks good so far. He's got like quick. He's got burst. He didn't have like long speed, but he's got burst, and he is an absolute freaking hammerhead. He's a pretty patient runner. I think that part's fun. The Dart thing, we'll see how it goes. You know, I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. No. I don't think it's a stretch from the fantasy angle part of it. I just think preseason is preseason. You know, I think he looked great in the preseason and obviously looked comfortable, which is the number one thing you want to see. I just don't want to get too over our skis because of that preseason. This is still a rookie quarterback in an environment that I would say is okay, depending on Andrew Thomas's health. That is a factor, but it's an okay environment. You have Malik Neighbors. I'm still kind of mixed on the whole Brian Daboll experience. We'll see, although he loves Jaxson Dart. So it's an okay environment. And again, he's coming from an offensive system that was hyper specific at college and Ole Miss. I think I can get there with Dart, but I don't want to get too excited too quickly. The one thing I will say that I am excited about is those RPO looks and what that means for Malik Neighbors. He is just going to get pummeled with targets. I know this is not the best matchup in the world. The Chargers defense is obviously tough. They really suffocate things in the secondary. But yeah, I mean, we're showing the projections here. 7 catches. I mean, yeah, I think he could catch like damn near 8-9 balls in this game. We'll see about the efficiency, but I think he's just going to get a ton of opportunity in this one.
Yeah, and I know you said we don't want to overrate the preseason. I think it's more about, when rookies show up on an NFL field, do they look like they belong? And I thought Dart in the preseason immediately looked like he belonged. And the competition is going to get a lot tougher in the regular season here, no doubt. But he's also kind of like an irrational confidence guy. And I think that's part of maybe what's getting me excited about the Giants is you need to like change the culture there, right? And it's the same coaching staff. So it's very rare for that kind of change to happen in season. And yet it almost seems like with Dart and Scadaboo for sure, like Scadaboo is just a wild man. They both kind of have like this irrational confidence on top of, I think, already showing some talent that maybe they could just like by sheer force of will start to push this thing in the right direction. Now, you mentioned the matchups, and the matchups is the scary part of this that might bring us back to reality because Chargers this week, like you said, that's a tough one. Saints next week, we'll be all over that game, right? We're going to attack the Saints for sure.
Oh, baby.
But then Eagles, Broncos, Eagles again, Niners, Bears, Packers, Lions. So I guess the Bears is like the only matchup after that Saints one that we're going to target for a while. It's rough in there. But the thing is, Scadaboo just came through against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have a very strong front against the run, and he was able to produce in that matchup. It was 121 scrimmage yards. And like you said, we'll see if the receiving work is still there, if Dart's actually checking down to him as much. But the fact that they're using him that way, they're basically building that offense around him and Neighbors. I think that could make this a pretty condensed attack, and I think it's going to be really good for fantasy. And those two are definitely guys you're going to want in your lineup. And then we'll see if Dart could potentially become more. And we know whenever there's a rookie who comes in that can run the ball a little bit, he has to be on your radar because sometimes these guys surprise. And with that rushing ability, it elevates their floor. And all of a sudden, you could have a guy that ends up either getting into your lineup as like a strong bye-week streamer type, or maybe even becoming a consistent starter, even though it's not always going to be pretty. There's going to be mistakes along the way, but that rushing ability elevates guys so much, right? The Konami code. Shout out Rich Rebar.
No question. I mean, he could end up being a fantasy starter just because of that rushing ability for sure. He might get himself smoked a few times. Him and Scadaboo, both these guys are like, they could end up getting themselves just smoked out there with their play style. But I do like your narrative scouting on this one about like these guys could be just different, like a different vibe than what they've had lately, which is certainly they need something else. They're kind of desperate for anything else there in New York. So I certainly don't hate that. Let's use Cam Scadaboo as a jumping off point to get to your next question for this week.
It's not so much a question as it is just like, should we be revisiting the rookie running back class here? And, I want to kind of project forward for these guys. And this has been a big thing we've talked about, but I think it's a big point this season that we have to focus on because this running back class was one that we wanted to invest in. And I will say, like last week, I believe during the hurry up offense segment, one of the questions you asked me, like, what is my kind of early season, the take from the preseason that early in the season, I think might be a little bit questionable. And one of the things I will say is that what I should have answered, it's that the rookie running backs would just hit the ground running right away and produce from week one. And we didn't necessarily see that from them, right? But things changed pretty quickly. And look how fast things started to change last week for Marion Hampton. The week before, we were questioning, is this guy somebody you're even going to start for fantasy? A week later, we're looking at him like he's an RB1 for fantasy now, right? And I think we'll see some of these situations start to change. Cam Scadaboo is another one where he was trying to, had an injury in the summer. He was trying to make his way in this offense. And then very quickly, he starts to take over. And both those things happen before the injuries happen in their backfield, right? Najee Harris getting hurt, very unfortunate. But we were seeing Hampton have a good game before that. And same thing with Tyron Tracy Jr. getting hurt. We were seeing Cam Scatterbo kind of take over that backfield before that injury took place. So then you go down the list, right? Like, what do we expect from these guys? We already talked about Scatterbo a bunch. Hampton as well. I think that one's pretty clear now. He has no competition in that backfield. I don't think there's anyone walking through the door that's going to challenge him in terms of like a free agent that they could bring in. Maybe they trade for someone, but I don't really expect that to happen. So Hampton now, in my mind, firmly top 15, but probably a low-end RB1 the rest of the way. Ashton Genty, this one is kind of interesting, right? Because he's gone from, in the drafts, we were taking him as like a low-end RB1. Now I think value-wise, you have to bump him down to that RB2 range. And he almost needs like one of these Hampton performances to kind of reverse that trend because it's going in the wrong direction. We talked about it. That Raiders offensive line, so bad. They're the worst line in terms of yards before contact. Genty's getting hit in the backfield constantly. And we need to see more from this offense. And we also need to see more from Genty as a pass catcher because I think that's one thing where before the season, we were talking about him just dominating touches. And he's not really so far. So he's down, still in the top 20 for me, but he's more down in like the lower end of the RB2 ranks because there's other guys that have stepped up. And just because we're not really seeing what we had hoped to see from him, which was massive volume and big plays and passing work and everything, it hasn't come to roost yet.
Maybe this ages poorly, but I just think Genty might be screwed this year. I mean, until something changes, right? Like, I hate to say it, but this is why we did the episode with Nate over the summer, where I looked at like the difference of ADP rank versus like projected offenses in the guys that were going like really high, multiple players from the same offense that were not projected to be good offenses. Like one of these guys might not work out. It's not been good for the Falcons so far with Bijan Robinson and Drake London. One of them is not working out. Neither of the guys are really working out in Las Vegas. Like it should be Brock Bowers, but he's obviously banged up, so that's not really the same thing. But this is the problem when there are systemic risks at the running back position. They're just very sensitive to it. And I definitely did not see them playing, damn Zamir White and Dylan Lobby on passing downs. That's been a surprise. But that really hurts Genty from a fantasy perspective because this offensive line is not breeding a good rushing environment. So I don't know, like until further notice, he's a guy you probably have to play in fantasy because like, how many better options do you have? And he is getting the volume, but it's just a tough spot right now. And I really don't see things changing. And I'm just kind of down on this whole Raiders environment. Hampton though, really encouraging week 3. The only thing I'll disagree with you about is that I think Najee might have made a push for more touches based on how things were going the first couple weeks, but obviously with he was pretty involved in the first quarter of that game, and then obviously he tears the Achilles, so it's over now. But the fact that Hampton was so involved in the passing game, ended up being 4th among running backs last week, and 4th overall in yards from scrimmage among all players because he was so involved in the passing game, which is key, Boone, because this is a pass first team, as I always say. And I think he's really good as a pass catcher. I think he has struggled a little bit to like diagnose lanes and kind of be a consistent tempo rusher for them. But he's a big boy out there on the edge. And the way you can do that is like kind of throwing him these swing passes. So I thought that was a nice little revelation for his value last week.
Yeah, on top of the fact that, he's playing in a really good offense and some of these other guys we're talking about are not necessarily. So being in a good offense, we hope that would be a positive for him, another notch in the column for him and his fantasy value moving forward. We could go further. Like those are the top rookie backs. Like we could go further down, right? Like Travion Henderson, he hasn't really done his part yet in avoiding some of those rookie mistakes and like that kind of early career learning curve that happens for some guys. And I think that's factored into him not getting as much playing time. So he needs to prove to the coaching staff that, he can be a trusted player in the offense. But what do you think about those fumbles last week, right? Like Ramondre Stevenson fumbling twice, Antonio Gibson coming in and fumbling. I know everybody went crazy that immediately after that in practice, we see Travion Henderson leading the running back position drills. The other guys behind him.
God.
I don't want to read too much into that, but I
couldn't believe that. I was like, oh my God, am I back in August again? We're doing the order of guys and drills.
And I don't think that this is something like people are looking for that thing that's like, oh man, it's changing right away. I don't think this is one that's going to change overnight, but I do think that game helped open the door again for Henderson to get some more opportunity
Mm.
and to hopefully take over this backfield, which I still think is the way this goes. I still think he ends up being the lead back here eventually. Right now, he's a risky RB3 flex option this week, and that's even still just based on the assumption that he's going to get some more work based on the way the last game went. So you're really going into that game with some risk in your lineup if you're going to go in there with Henderson. But you could take that chance because I think he is going to come out of that last game and have a big shot here to earn a bigger role. And let's just hope that he can come through with it. RJ Harvey was somebody that was kind of for a while there going in a similar range to Henderson in drafts in the summer. And for him, he is clearly behind J.K. Dobbins. And I don't think that one's surprising at all. I think we mentioned that as a strong possibility that the season would begin, that the Broncos would have the veteran out there, Dobbins would lead the way. And I think one of the bigger developments recently, actually, for Harvey in fantasy is the fact that Tyler Bidet was taken out of the picture last week, right? This was almost like a 3-man backfield early in the season. And last week, we saw Bidet's touches go elsewhere. Now, they didn't go to Harvey, unfortunately. They actually went to Dobbins. But this not being a 3-man committee, this going down to a 2-man committee, that's going to help Harvey for sure. I think that's a positive. And the real hope here for Harvey, and this isn't the best process to follow for fantasy, and I've said this before, this is kind of one spot where I'm making an exception. But Dobbins being hurt every year of his career, unless the mile high air like changes something for him, I think the most likely outcome here is he is going to break down again throughout the season. And at that point, Harvey would be the next man up. So either way, you're holding Harvey. You might even want to buy low on him right now. He's just a stash. You're not going to put him in your lineup yet. But I think at some point this season, he is going to have a big impact on the fantasy outcomes for everybody.
I agree with that. And the one thing that's on my radar with both Henderson and Harvey is that neither of their offenses are all that good right now. Like, I kind of think both of these teams need something else than what they've gotten. I mean, yeah, J.K. Dobbins has produced, but from a rushing success rate standpoint, they're actually not that great, especially over the course of all 3 downs. He has been productive, and I think he should remain in the picture here, but they kind of need a little bit more pop from their run game because Bo Nix, it's been bad to start this year. Like, he's just been flat out bad, and I think the offense kind of still has the training wheels on him. So Harvey was always kind of a little bit of a long-term play that, like, yeah, you kind of have to draft him in the 5th round, but you got to hope to ride the wave in the back half of the season. So I'm definitely still optimistic that can happen. Nothing has shaken my faith from the first few weeks to think that can't happen. Henderson, like, yeah, this is the week to prove it, man. This is the week to prove it. Okay, it's Carolina Panthers defense that shut down the passing game for the Falcons last week, but is still vulnerable against the run. And there's opportunity with 2 proven fumblers fumbling last week in Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. So Henderson just needs to step up, play better, and like put a couple of explosive runs on the field. Like, that's what needs to happen for him. And like we can't project that going into it. We have no idea if that's going to happen, but like you said, it would be risky to play him, but that's what you're hoping to see if you have Henderson stashed away on your bench.
Yeah, you have to, as a rookie, you have to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves, and this is going to be one for him. I would also say, going back to Harvey, he might get a chance this week too, because you know what helps a rushing attack going up against the Bengals defense? It's the second easiest matchup for fantasy backs. They've given up at least 90 scrimmage yards and or a touchdown to 5 different backs in 3 weeks, Harmon. So we could see, I think Dobbins is going to have a big game. We could see both of these guys have just a huge game. So I think this is going to be a good spot for both of them. And we're not even mentioning Bashal Tutin, who's coming on, and Ollie Gordon, who got more opportunity last week, and Woody Marks, who's, his snaps have been going up. So there are so many rookie backs out there that are going to be meaningful for fantasy. So make sure you're stashing these guys. Even if they don't have the biggest opportunity right now, I still think their time is going to come.
All right, let's quickly hit your 6th and final question for this week, which we're going to stay on the rookie theme for this one.
Yeah, it ties into everything that we've talked about in this segment, right? It's who is the favorite right now to win Rookie of the Year? And this is more just, who do you think? Who do I think? In my mind, we've gone over a lot of the candidates already. I think Hampton, in my mind, should be the favorite. I think he's the guy. It's not just the stats that he's going to put up. It's the offense that he's in. It's the team that he's on. They're going to be contenders. They're going to have a great year. And he is going to be the lead back on that team, scoring touchdowns, making big plays. I really like Emeka Egbuka. We know that. But eventually Mike
Mhm.
Evans is going to be back. Eventually Chris Godwin will be, we think, closer to 100%. There's going to be other guys in that offense. So he's not like the clear only guy, only star there. Tyler Warren is great, but he would need some really big games. I think for a tight end to get in that conversation, they need to be just
that's gonna
blowing
be
everybody
tough.
out of the water. That's tough for him. Jaxson Dart, like the odds for him are still pretty good, but I just don't think the Giants are going to win enough. I don't think that's going to be the case there. Cam Scatterbo, there'd have to be like a wild narrative for him to come through, right? He'd have to score a ton of touchdowns. I just think that he's going to be a little behind because they're not going to win that many games either. I think Tedero McMillan is the real other contender here because I think he, even though he's on a team that's probably going to be losing, I think he could put up some really monster stats and make a really strong case that way. But to me, I think this is Hampton's award to lose.
Man, that's spicy. Yeah, I would say for Dart, though, Ty usually goes to the quarterback, so if he comes out there and he has like some decent games, they manage a respectable season for New York, like enough to get Brian Daboll to get another season. Like I do think he could. I always come back to that year where Kyler Murray had like a whatever rookie quarterback season and Josh Jacobs was one of the best, most productive backs in the league, and the award went to Kyler Murray. So that's the thing I always come back to. I agree with you about Tyler Warren. Leads all tight ends in yards right now, but it's like 140. You need a lot more than that to kind of get there. McMillan, if I'd like file a vote today, and obviously 3 games in way too early, I think would be my vote just because he has been the most impressive like when I watch him. But you don't get this award based on film. You get it on stats. And the Panthers are going to throw the ball a lot. They lead the NFL in dropbacks at least through the first 2 weeks. So they will be throwing a lot. He will get opportunity, but how many touchdowns is he going to score? The Hampton one is spicy. I kind of think, though, Emeka Egbuka he probably needs to really go crazy. Receiver is a little bit difficult. That said, though, if he strings together a strong month without Mike Evans around, and the Bucs are a good team and they survive, they win the NFC South, they go to the playoffs, and like Egbuka scores 10 touches. He's already scored what, 3 touchdowns so far? He scores 10 touchdowns or something. I do think he would be a pretty good contender. So I think the 3 guys that are probably in the like non-quarterback division are probably Hampton, McMillan, and Egbuka that I would say you could bet on to win this award.
Yeah, I think for Egbuka, he would just have to dust the veterans. Like we need to get to a point where Mike Evans comes back. He's not the same. Godwin's not the same. And Egbuka is just
That's very
running
possible,
away
though,
with
right?
that receiving core. And it's not impossible. It is not impossible for that to be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if he can dust Sterling Shepard, but I mean those other 2, declining guys. We'll see if he can. We'll see if he can dust the great Sterling Shepard. But for now, I think he's in a pretty good spot. All right, we are going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll run through literally no one's games of the week right after this. All right, we are back. We're continuing to preview the Week 4 slate, and it is time to get into my literally no one's games of the week. Yeah, these are the games you kind of want to nap through. Okay, these ones, but you don't have to watch them necessarily, but you do have to care about certain specific fantasy football storylines. And I'm really stretching here to tell you to care about a game that involves the Tennessee Titans. And yet they're not the only 0-3 team involved in the mix here, because the Houston Texans are also here and they're kind of on desperation watch at this point. So there's the Texans aspect of this in this matchup, but I want to talk about the Titans here because I don't know if we talked about this yet on the show. We've talked about the Falcons and some of their coaching changeover and chaos. The head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Brian Callahan, literally gave up his play calling duties this week and said at the press conference when asked about it, I don't think there's anything wrong with my play calling. Was like, well, somebody must not think very highly of your play calling because you're not doing it anymore. But Boone, I actually think maybe this could be a good thing. Usually the guy giving up the play calling duties in season is precursor to guy being fired, and that is kind of the way things are trending for Brian Callahan. It's not going very well. But Bo Hardigree did take over for the Raiders a couple of years ago after Josh McDaniels got fired midway through the 2023 season. And I think actually did some okay things with this offense down the stretch for the Raiders that year. He's going to call plays now. Skips over the offensive coordinator. And man, the Titans just need something, bro, because they could be an interesting team for fantasy because they're pretty concentrated in the passing game. It's Alec Iomanner, the day 3 rookie, he's getting a lot of work. There's also Calvin Ridley, who is playing terrible but getting a lot of volume. And then there's Tony Pollard, who leads all running backs in snap percentage right now. There could be something in this offense. Is this change at play caller enough to maybe sort of kind of make us interested? Or should I just say enough already with the Tennessee Titans?
I don't think that we're encouraged to swear on this show, but the inclusion of this game, Harmon, like one almost flew out of my mouth when I saw this. Like, what are we talking about? No, I can't get on board with this.
No one's games of the week.
And I normally am totally on board with all these bad games, and I want to watch any NFL game. And yet this one, Harmon, like this is one that I am not looking forward to going back and watching. You tried to make a great case for the Titans here. You really did. And yes, there are a couple guys in this offense that for fantasy could potentially be in your lineup, but I don't think at this point you feel very good about it. I don't think we're getting anything from the Titans this year. I don't think a play caller is going to change that. I think the only thing in this game that we're looking to is our guy Nico Collins, and we're hoping that Nico Collins can keep things going here and have a good game. I mean, that's the only thing. That's the only thing in this game that I'm really that interested in. Woody Marks, I guess maybe Woody Marks can get more snaps and keep kind of eating into Nick Chubb's workload and maybe become a thing for fantasy. Christian Kirk, can he get that offense going and contribute on that side? But man, this is really stretching it, I think. Like, I know the concept of this and generally I'm on board, but man, this one is tough to really push as having any real fantasy interest outside of Nico Collins. I'm sorry.
Dude, fair enough. This is the segment, okay? This is literally no one's games of the week, but we got to figure some of these things out. We got it. We're just asking questions here. I'm just asking questions about the damn Titans and whether a play caller change could. I mean, can Bo Hardigree teach Calvin Ridley how to catch the ball? I did see a good stat from Paul Kaharski, who's covered the team forever, that noted that Calvin Ridley's 3 games with the team last year were also just super unproductive. So maybe there's just something about he's a slow starter. I don't know, but my God, like that connection between him and Cam Ward has not been great on both sides. But I think, man, Cam has really he's surviving as a rookie quarterback, and he's throwing aggressively. Ridley just got to come through. He's just got to come through, and like that's that. But we'll see.
I think the other problem fantasy wise here is like Ridley's outlook before the season was that he was just going to dominate volume. And he's not. Like Alec Iomanner is not totally involved and almost matching
he's not playing
him in
well
terms of his usage. Right. Like, and so he's not. And Chigakonkwo at tight end is also really involved in the offense. So we're just not seeing Ridley be that like bad team volume hog guy that comes through for fantasy. And it's a big part of it is on him. Yeah.
Yeah, the tough part with any of these guys, and part of my thesis about liking Calvin Ridley is not crazy, but like a mid-round pick that you could take and maybe be a better like a value wide receiver 3. Right now, he's been one of the worst picks you could have made. Is that again, he would be a little bit more. He would certainly be more efficient than he has been, and also that he's never gonna be like a 30% target share player. He's not that good. But I did think the offense would be better than what it has been so far. And it's quite literally been one of the worst offenses in the league. But so have the Texans. And I want to note that like Nico Collins and L'Jarius Sneed are like chirping at each other in the media. I don't know if this matters because L'Jarius Sneed said, I don't even like acknowledge who Nico Collins is. And Nico's kind of like, yeah, you're going to find out or whatever. So I think Nico is trending in the right direction. I know people are still kind of panicked about the whole Texans-ness of it all, but which I understand. A lot of questions about the Texans from a structural and offensive line perspective, but I think this could be a really nice, not even a get-right game for Nico because he's been productive the last 2 weeks, but did kind of have a weird drop-ish last week. He also had the fumble last week. I think this could be Nico's best pure football game of the season. But all right, this game stinks. Fine, let's talk about another one I think you'll be a little bit more interested in. Bears at Raiders. The Raiders are terrible. I get that. They're depressing from a fantasy angle because Ashton Genty's banged. But for the Bears, this is another opportunity for that offense to go out after a tough start first 2 games and put up another like really good spot here. The Raiders defense is as depressing as the Raiders offense is. Their defense is even more so, especially at the linebacker position, bro. they're one of the worst linebacker rooms in the league.
Yeah.
And Ben Johnson back in Detroit, and you're seeing some of it, like he will just put your linebackers in a blender. He will torment that group. So I'm expecting yet another impressive showing from the Bears offense. Oh my God, yeah. Let's look at this chart of Rome Odunze outproducing Brock Bowers. I know Bowers is hurt. He plays for a worse team. I don't care. I'm reveling in the Rome Odunze production. What are we expecting from the Bears offense here this week against the Raiders?
Yeah, I think they're going to have another good game. I'm with you. And that's the key. We just want to see them build off of last week, right? Because there's still going to be struggles. Like you're going to have, good games and bad games, and one huge game against a bad Cowboys defense doesn't just make this team a juggernaut. It's like a slow process that they're building. And I think everyone wants to overreact to them doing poorly in the first couple of weeks. And now everybody's probably going to overreact to them doing great last week. But let's see them go on the road in Vegas against a team that they should beat. Let's see them get the job done in a city that's, let's face it, pretty enticing to go and, go enjoy yourself, go have some fun. A lot of distractions there. I mean, really, Harmon, what they need to do is they need to follow yours and my lead, right? Like we went there on a work trip in the summer. We were very professional. We got our work done.
Focus.
We were able to go out. We were social a couple nights. We got to go out a little bit, but still made sure that we got our work done. That's what the Bears need to do. They need to go to Vegas and get the job done. And let's hope that they do it and just keep building from there.
Yeah, if they win that game, they can treat themselves to a little bit of the lounge bar at the Aria and maybe see the greatest saxophone player on planet Earth. Like if they win the game and they get a couple touchdowns to Rome Odunze, I think that would be allowed. Let me ask you about DeAndre Swift. When you're ranking running backs for the week, is DeAndre Swift the number one player for you to be like, all right, I got to check myself here. Like this guy should be ranked a lot higher than I have him because he's on the field a bunch and like this offense is trending in the right direction? Because that's what he is for me every time I log in to do the running back rankings.
Yeah, it like feels wrong wherever you put him initially, and you got to kind of bump him up, and he ends up always kind of in the 20s. But yeah, the way he's been producing, like you could make an argument for even higher than that. And I'm kind of glad that we're seeing some of these other guys step up now, and it kind of justifies the Swift ranking a little more, like pushing him down. But yeah, he's somebody that is in starting lineups, and I would say a big part of that too is that Kyle Monangai has been getting some opportunities and really hasn't done much. Like he hasn't done anything exciting that would make a case for him, taking more work, carving out a bigger role, or even, I'm not even going to present the idea that he could overtake Swift. I just don't think he's that player right now. So they don't have anybody else to do it. So barring a Swift injury, he's going to continue to be like this boring fantasy asset that is leading the way in what we think is going to be a pretty good offense that's starting to kind of show signs of life.
And I'll just say on the Raiders side to actually say something nice about the Raiders, which I haven't been doing. Number one, Geno will throw them in. He'll keep them in this game. I mean, they could win this game, by the way. That's very plausible. But Geno will throw them in this game. Obviously, the Bears defense has had its flaws. And I'll say the Trey Tucker stuff, like I went back and charted that game. I don't think he's like a worthless player or a complete fluke. He's so fast. He's got legit speed. He wins against zone coverage, not like at a high level or anything, but at an acceptable level. I was kind of struggling to think of who he reminds me of as a player. And I saw Hayden Winks tweet out, like, could he be this year's Darnell Mooney? Like a guy that, basically nobody drafts and ends up actually having some real value because he's just on the field for an offense that is reasonably good and has some ability. And I was like, that's actually not a terrible player comp either. Speed-based receiver who gets down the field but is not a consistent high-volume player. I think that's who Trey Tucker could be. So, between the two kind of everybody thinks this is a fugazi waiver wire pickups of the last 2 weeks, Troy Franklin, Trey Tucker's just on the field more, and I think will give you some bigger weeks than Troy Franklin will, even if I think that Troy Franklin probably like long term maybe has a little bit more intrigue. But I liked the Tucker stuff going back and watching maybe more than I thought, even if I don't agree with this Geno Smith Santana Moss comparison, but mostly because Santana Moss was playing when I was like in high school. So I mean, come on. All right, last game of the week here. Literally no one's game of the week is Panthers at Patriots. We've talked a little bit about the Travion Henderson stuff. We don't have to talk about the damn running backs there. I do kind of want to talk about the Patriots passing game because, man, they need something else, bro. Like Drake May being as good as he's been so far, and he's not been perfect. He's made some mistakes. Like he's got to cut those mistakes out at some point. But that being said, I think he's played pretty well. And this receiver core is so that was something that I was kind of intrigued by the receiver core of like, all right, what if it's Diggs, Pop Douglas, and Kyle Williams? Well, they're not playing Kyle Williams, and I kind of think they need to change that at some point, because I know Mike Vrabel's hard on rookies or whatever, but they need explosive play separation ability. Diggs, unfortunately, it doesn't look great for Diggs so far, and maybe it will in a month or two. He's coming off a serious injury, he's older, but maybe it will at some point. Kayshon Boutte is kind of a sacrificial X in the role they have him in right now, and I mean, we're doing the Matt Collins thing again. Pop Douglas is averaging like 1 yard per target. I think they need something else in this passing offense besides Hunter Henry randomly blowing up for these like eruption games.
I was just going to say, like, Hunter Henry, I mentioned it before the season, really easy tight end schedule to start the year, and he's taken advantage of it more weeks than not. I'm looking at the Kyle Williams thing almost the other way, though, and this is more of a dynasty conversation, but like the fact that he wasn't able to earn a role, and this is what the receiving core looks like, and some of the reports like in the summer were that he just had a really bad training camp. I feel like this is pretty condemning for his value. Like I'm now really worried about him turning into anything. So hopefully he does get an opportunity and can pop up and do something this year, because if he can't get on the field and this is what that receiving core looks like, yikes, that is a very bad sign for him. But Drake May continuing to like establish himself as a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Like he's getting it done even with this bad group, running around a little bit. I think it's a pretty positive sign for him this year, but yeah, it'll be nice when they eventually can find him some proper weapons.
By the way, I was not kidding when I said Demario Douglas is averaging a yard per target. He has 13 targets on the year and 13 receiving yards. I was not kidding. That's even Xavier Legette's looking at that like, damn, bro, come on, you got to step that up. Speaking of which, Xavier Legette's on the other side of the field here, I guess, although he's banged up. That's something to watch too. Tetero McMillan obviously has the injury, but he is like their whole passing game right now, because Hunter Renfrow he's all right. He's a solid role player. Legette is just giving them nothing. Jatavian Sanders is now going to miss time. So to me, it's just another week of like, they really need Jalen Coker back. And what I'm focused on in this game, the Patriots defense is again, it's not like some crazy unit or anything, but I'm dialing in on this offensive line, which last week we didn't see much difference between Austin Corbett and Robert Hunt being out, especially Robert Hunt, who's a great player at right guard. But that's just because they blew out the Falcons, and that had more to do with the Falcons than the Panthers. That is something I want to keep an eye on in this game, just because that will be big for Bryce Young, which will be big for obviously the trickle down to McMillan and of course Chuba Hubbard as well. So any takes on the Panthers here before we get out?
I would just say to everyone, like, keep in mind the score of that game last week, and Rico Dowdle getting more work last week, I think had more to do with that. He ended up getting a touchdown in the game, but Chuba Hubbard is clearly the lead back, and the concerns that we had before the season that he was going to cede a bunch of passing down work to Rico Dowdle hasn't really worked out that way. Chuba Hubbard is getting plenty of receiving work, so it's been a great season for him so far, and I expect that it's going to continue for a little while here. The schedule is still pretty good. So he's making do. He's just a really solid fantasy player, but another one of those guys that kind of look at his name and you're not excited to have him in your lineup, and yet he keeps producing, and I think this will probably be another decent game for him.
All right, Wolf, that was especially two of the three pretty brutal games, which, hey,
struggled through that one.
That's another thing though, Boone. This segment's going to get more and more gross as the season goes on. Weeks 1 and 2, it's like, oh, well, this is interesting. But then now these teams are actually showing us who they really are. Buckle up, buddy, because I'm gross. I'm disgusting. I'm going to put the worst games in here, and I'm going to make you talk about them. So get ready to learn Tennessee. Get ready to learn talking Tennessee Titans in 2025. Find new and creative ways for you to be able to tell people not to play Calvin Ridley. So get used to you work on that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will finish it up with our Hurry Up Offense segment right after this. All right, welcome back. It is time to get to the segment that is just, it's taking America, it's taking Canada, Boone. I mean, both of the nations are talking about just this, the Hurry Up Offense.
Everyone's watching.
Well, I don't know about global, but it's crushing it here in North America. How about that? We're hoping to go to another continent, and yeah, get this thing global, because the hurry up offense, many people are saying it's the segment of the year. This is where Boone and I go rapid fire through the rest of the show, forcing the other to answer a question or respond to a prediction for week number 4 in 40 seconds or less. The twist is, someone can throw one challenge flag per week to force the other to expand on the answer reaction if it is warranted. Once the flag has been thrown, it cannot be thrown again that week. So with that, welcome to the Hurry Up Offense. All right, Boone, based on our pre-little chat there during the break, I'm going to definitely let you go first on this one.
All right. I don't think you're going to like this one. I want you to rank the 6 Ohio State wide receivers, these specific 6. We're not going to count like Curtis Samuel. Rank these 6 Ohio State wide receivers who are currently in the NFL from best to worst, and I will list them in order of most recently drafted. So Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Terry McLaurin.
All right. I forgot about Terry. Okay, number 1 is JSN, and I think that's pretty easy. I'll go Garrett Wilson at 2. This is where it's a little tough. That was easy. By the way, Marv is going to be last. Okay, he's last. Tough scene, but I think he's last right now. I'll go Egbuka, Olave, Terry, Marv. I will just say real quick on this. A couple of people in my Discord we were talking about Marvin Harrison today, and I was like, we were talking about Ohio State wide receivers. I said him. I referred to him as him, Marvin Harrison, and somebody's like, wow, you've made him Voldemort. So a couple more bad weeks for Marv, which I'm hoping we're doing the Thursday night thing. I'm going too long, but I hope we were doing the Thursday night thing. He has 2 touchdowns on Thursday night. That's what I'm hoping to will into existence here. But if not, he's on Voldemort treatment. So anyways, JSN, Garrett Wilson, Emeka Egbuka, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's where we're at.
I like it.
All right, my turn
disagree.
here. That actually was easier than I thought it was going to be. Okay, my first one. This is a prediction, Boone. This is going to be the Ladd McConkey week. This is where he gets back on track and puts up a big number. Yes or no?
I love this call, and I want to say yes, because when I was working on my rankings this morning, I was trying to find every little thing that I could to bump him up, because it has to happen at some point. He's too good. And we also, I think, forget that, like, in a locker room, if one guy hasn't had the big game and the other guys have, if one guy hasn't found the end zone and the other guys have, they go out of their way to make sure. That happens all the time in good offense, especially when you're scoring as much as the Chargers are going to score. So, yes, I'm on board. This is the big Ladd McConkey week.
I love it. I love that part of the analysis by you. I was thinking the same thing. Justin Herbert wants to get his guy the football, and Keenan Allen was talking in an interview this week how important Ladd McConkey is and how he's like teaching him stuff. So yeah, there's a desire to get Ladd going against a team, by the way, in the Giants that plays the most man coverage in the NFL according to fantasy points data, and Ladd's their best man coverage beating receiver. I love it. All right, give me your next one here.
All right, I'm bringing back an oldie but a goodie. Last week you asked me what was one of my preseason takes that I thought that was already potentially wrong. And I gave you an answer. We talked about it earlier in the show today that I gave you the answer of Dalton Kincaid. But I actually think in hindsight, the answer was probably the rookie running backs not coming out week 1 and just blowing up right away. So I'm going to put it back to you. What is one of your preseason takes that you already feel like you might be wrong about?
The Drake London has a chance to win the Triple Crown for sure. I think that's already over. That's done. That's toast. I think that's not happening. He can still recover and be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy, but that's not happening. Just with the way the offense is structured right now, it's just a completely different role. That's the thing. He's playing a completely different position than I thought he was going to be playing this year. So I'm selling on that take. And I also think I probably overrated the learning curve for Travis Hunter literally playing 2 positions and focusing on wide receiver full time. I think I should have I don't regret anything I said about him as a prospect or from a dynasty angle, but I wish I'd taken a little bit more. I wasn't like all in on him, but I wish I'd taken a more of a tepid response in redraft here.
Yeah, seems like they really have him just focused on just one position on each side, which might not be great for fantasy the rest of the way.
Probably good for his real life development, though, but that's another conversation. All right, next one here for me. If we redrafted today, who would you be taking at the first overall pick, and why is it Jonathan Taylor?
It is not Jonathan Taylor. It is Christian McCaffrey, who I would be taking 101.
Oh, there it is.
I love all the jokes that he is just, sucking the life force out of all the other 49ers players to be able to continue to play at this level. But he continues to get massive volume. And with all the other injuries, they have to keep going to him. And he's still producing. I mean, the numbers might not be quite as efficient as they used to be, but he is still a damn good player. And he's putting up good numbers. And Jonathan Taylor is certainly right up there. He would be like a top 3 pick at this point. Top 3, top 4, maybe. I think you can make an argument. But I would be going CMC. I love what we've seen from him so far this year.
Fair enough. We disagree there, but those are good. Those are good ones. So go ahead.
We are going to see both these things this week. I want to know, what do you prefer? Sunday morning NFL games in Europe or Monday night doubleheaders? And this is also like a sneaky way to remind everyone that there is an early Sunday morning game this week. So make sure you have your lineup set early on Sunday.
Don't get too hammered on Saturday night, okay? Number 1, drink responsibly, please. Be an adult. Number 2, don't get too hammered on Saturday night. You can't set your fantasy lineups on a Sunday morning game, okay? Be professional, especially if you're on the West Coast. I'll tell you, if I didn't do this professionally, if this wasn't my job, it would definitely be the early Sunday morning. I'd be like, sick, early football, let's get into it. But because this is my job, I have 2 TVs, I actually kind of like the Monday night doubleheader a little bit more than the Sunday night game, but only because this is my job. So that's the only reason. All right. What's your answer? I'll throw the challenge flag to give you more time. What is your answer to that?
I would say the Sunday morning, because I'm already awake and I'm already working on the rankings. I get up at, depending how I feel about the rankings, I get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning on Sunday to do all the work in the morning with all the overnight news we get. And I love having a game on. It's the same reason why I like Formula One now, because Formula One, they're racing in the morning. I can just throw it on the TV while I'm working. It's great.
Oh my God. You would get up. I get up early in the morning, but not to do my freaking rankings. So shout out to you. That's why you use Justin Boone's rankings and not Matt Harmon's. Anyways, my next question here, who is your favorite sell high candidate right now?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'll take the low hanging fruit here and I'll say Mark Andrews. Like, there's just no way. We just saw his best game of the season. I would totally move off of that if you can. If you want to look at somebody else, I would also bring up Baker Mayfield. With the injuries that they have at the receiving core, like, the guy's a top 10 fantasy quarterback right now. Everyone saw how good he was last year for fantasy. We expected some regression in the touchdown scoring. Now he's going to get a very tough schedule coming up here. I think it's going to be a problem for him. So I would be moving off of Baker Mayfield and Mark Andrews. If you could waive
time for one more, so let's let it rip.
One more. All right. We'll leave that one for next week. If you could spend a game day in the life of any NFL player, who would it be?
Oh my God. Like,
we always got to end on a weird one. Come on. And this factors in that it is game day. It's specifically game day. You have to play the game as this player as well. So you might want to think about which position that you want to be on the field for. I'm just forcing you to say a kicker. That's basically where we're going.
Hell no. Dude, I would be Jackson Hawes from your Bills. I would be like the grinder blocking tight end who just randomly gets to pop out for a touchdown, which, if I hadn't obliterated my shoulder, that maybe could have been what I did in football anyways. You never know. That's what I like to think. That would be my answer. The random blocking tight end. That's my answer. I bet nobody expected that to be it, but that's it for me.
I'm in some very deep dynasty leagues where Haas was actually getting picked up this week. So that tells you about what a degenerate that I am. He's actually getting picked up out there in dynasty.
That is a perfect sicko thing for us to end the show on. Boone, appreciate you, buddy. This was awesome. Make sure you are dialed into Justin Boone's rankings to get your lineups right. In addition to that, for those of you that were busy in the YouTube chat with specific questions for us, John Daigle handles a live Q&A on this very YouTube channel at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific here on YouTube. So subscribe to get all of your questions answered in real time. This show is over, but we will be back on Sunday for our live recap. Chris Allen and I will be going live as soon as the late game windows ends. Chiefs Ravens, that one hits 000. Join us right here on YouTube. Until then, we are out.